Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a regular subscriber, welcome back. I know I say that every time, but I really appreciate you guys watching my videos, so thank you. In this video, I'm going to be doing a January wrap-up, so just kind of going through everything that I read in the month of January. So let's just jump right in. So these first few books, I'm just going to list off one right after the other because they're all in a series and by the same author. So I'll just do that. The first one I started in December but finished in January, so I haven't talked about it yet. So I figured I'd talk about it in this video. But the first book is Out of Midnight. And then I read Heir of Fire. And then I read Empire of Storms. So those were the three books I read, not consecutively, but I read them throughout the month of January, and I flew through them as I'm flying through this whole series because they're just so good. So those are the second, third, and fourth books in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. If you aren't familiar with it, I talk about it in other videos, at least the Throne of Glass series, I think I've mentioned before. They're fantastic, they're great. I love them. If you haven't read them, you definitely should jump on that train now. I gave 5 stars across the board to all the books I've read so far in this series because they're just so good. I won't spend too much time talking about them because they're pretty popular, but also I've talked about them in other videos, and it's very hard to talk about different books in the series without giving something away from the previous books. So I will just leave it at that. If you're interested in learning about more about this series and what my thoughts are, at least around the first book, you can check out the video where I talk about it, and I will link that down below in the description. Like I said, they were 5 stars across the board. They were fantastic. And I know because I'm not talking about them, it's gonna make this video super short, but it's fine. They were great. I love them, just know that. One of the first books I read this month though, besides finishing the second book in the Throne of Glass series, was King of Crows by Libba Bray. This was the last book in the Diviner series. I think it was the 4th book in total. That's how many books are in that series. It wraps up everybody's adventure in this story. Again, I talk about the Diviner series in other videos too. I wasn't the biggest fan of this series. There were moments where I loved it, and there were moments where I was like, it was okay. This series felt very, while I loved the premise of it, we focus on a group of kids, you know, roughly between the ages. Well, one of them is like 10 or 11. The others are more like 16, 17-year-olds, kind of in that area, but it's centered around this group of kids who are diviners in the 1920s in New York City. So they all have different sort of magical abilities, and you start to find out where these magical abilities came from, and they have to fight this big evil thing, of course, by the end of the series, kind of follow them through all of that. Again, this series was just kind of okay for me. I wasn't as hyped for it as other people were that I know really love this series, but this series in itself felt very kid-like to me in the writing style, in the storytelling, in every part of it. It just didn't feel like the stakes were that high because they kept cracking these very 1920s-esque type jokes with each other and having like this very typical 1920s talking. Like the dialogue was very much that way, like, hey, doll face, and it didn't come across well to me. I mean, I finished the series, so that does tell you it was good enough to read it. But as far as me loving it, I really didn't love this series as much as I thought I would. It was a little bit of a letdown. The first book was okay. The second book I really didn't need. That was probably my least favorite book out of the whole series. The third book was probably my favorite. We got to learn more about more of the characters versus just 1 or 2 of the main people we focused on in the first book. So the third book really started to follow the characters I actually enjoyed. So that's why I think I love the third books more than the other ones. And then the fourth book, again, was just okay. It was kind of along the lines of the first book where it was all right, but since it was the end of the series, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of a punch and more of a wrap up to everything. And it just kind of fell flat for me, unfortunately. Then the only other book I have to talk about in this video, because the other ones that I read were a series, was All the Stars and Teeth. I don't remember who this is by, I gotta look that up. So it was All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. This book I listened to as an audiobook, so I'm trying to kind of remember exactly everything that happened. This book was, again, just kind of okay. It was definitely better than I thought it was going to be. It wasn't, you know, hands down fabulous, amazing book that I'm going to recommend to everybody, but it was pretty good. So this book, we follow a girl, Amora. We follow this girl named Amora, and she is the princess of this kingdom. Her dad is a high animancer, which means he possesses soul magic. So his family, their family line, is the only people who can access this magic and be able to use it, and basically they can kill people with this soul magic. So it's a very dangerous type of magic, and they're the only ones who can wield it, and everyone else in the kingdom only can wield one type of magic. If you wield more than one type of magic, if you wield like 2 or 3, the beast that kind of haunts this family line will come and attack the kingdom, is basically what kind of happens. So we follow Amora, and she is about to become she's going to prove herself to be the next great high animancer like her dad. And of course, none of that goes to plan, and she finds out a lot more about her kingdom and her people than her father was letting on and letting her know. So she starts to discover all these secrets in this past history of her kingdom, and a lot of things that she just doesn't agree with and she wants to change for the future. But she also has to prove to her people that she is worth ruling and a responsible ruler and everything like that. So like I said, this was interesting. It was good enough for me to listen to all the way through, and it was one that was pretty good. I really did enjoy the relationships that were being built between Amora and some of the other characters. I loved the concept of like having an animancer. I'd never heard of that before. I've heard of a necromancer, obviously, but not like an animancer. So people possessing that type of magic and them being the only ones who could do that, I thought that was really cool. So it was good. Overall, if I had to give this a rating, I would probably give it a 4 out of 5 stars because it was really good. It was interesting. It definitely wasn't bad in any sort of way. It just wasn't fantastic, fabulous book for me. I probably won't recommend it highly to other people, but if people are reading it, I will want to talk to them about it because it was pretty interesting. But yeah, that about wraps up this video, guys. Sorry for the very short January wrap up. The other thing I wanted to talk about, now that I am an associate literary agent at this literary agency, I am reading a lot of manuscripts. I read a lot last year, but I didn't really talk about them because obviously these books aren't published. You know, I'm not gonna give out sensitive information about people because obviously I can't do that and I don't want to do that. I thought it would be cool to just say like how many manuscripts I've read each month on top of the books that I'm reading, just for personal pleasure and fun, just to show you how many books I'm actually reading this year, because last year I didn't keep track of the manuscripts I read, only the books I read for fun, and I really want to keep track of the manuscripts I read this year because I know I'm going to read a lot. So January, I really did only read one manuscript fully, and I started a developmental edit of another manuscript. So a developmental edit is where I basically reread the book and go through it and make edits and changes and help the author kind of fix things and fill in plot holes and things like that. So that's what I did in January. So I will add that onto the list of books I read. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, I would love it if you do so. Hit that subscribe button below. Comment down below. Tell me if you've read any of these books at all, ever, and what you think of them. What did you read in January? I'd love to know that too, even if it wasn't similar to mine. And I think that's about it. Hit the thumbs up if you liked this video too. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.